Welcome, everyone, to another market update. We are here with my good friend, Tom. Tom is a realtor in Toronto, and he is going to give us the scoop on what's going on with the real estate market right now. It is April 2023. Tom, there's a lot going on.
There is certainly a lot going on, as you mentioned, a lot of changes. We're going to talk about that today. So I guess we might as well just kind of jump in to share with your audience here what we're seeing.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your time, by the way. We appreciate all of your insights.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know what, I might as well kind of get into this as far as, kind of sharing with you kind of high level, Elizabeth, what we're seeing. So this chart here, it just depicts the average price for a home in the greater Toronto area. So just to kind of recap, last year, okay, almost at this time in February of 2022, we hit a peak price of 1.3 million, as you can see from that red arrow there at the very top. And because of those 8 interest rate hikes, we saw prices go down about 20% on average. And you'll see here this big green circle, okay, where you can see that the prices are stabilizing. And the interesting thing is during this sort of period of time, we've had about 3 or 4 rate increases, but you'll notice it has not had an effect on pricing per se. And why? Low inventory. Okay, so that's been cushioning the blow here. And when we kind of compare, oops, kind of went too far. Now we kind of compare, March of 2023 with March of 2022, keeping in mind that this is almost comparing against the peak. Our sales as a collective whole are down about 36%. You can see there. So there's less buyers than there were a year ago, okay? And at the same time, though, our inventory remaining about the same. And then you'll see prices decline by about 14% or so. Having kind of said that, Elizabeth, what I can share with you is like in April, we are seeing a lot of positivity in the market in the sense that, as you probably already heard, that the Bank of Canada held rates for the second time in the row, right? So you'll see here kind of this article here. My virtual background may kind of skew this, but look at that. Bank of Canada holds interest rates at 4.5%.
Yeah.
And what that's doing is it's creating a lot of confidence in buyers, right? They're finally saying, okay, you know what? This may be the best time to enter the market. And we are seeing that increase in demand at the moment. In fact, once that was announced, LePage here, there's an article right at the very bottom here that all of a sudden they've increased their forecast for prices to go up by 7.5%. Whereas before they were saying only 2%. So that's a big bump. And the long-term growth rate for pricing in real estate is roughly about 6-7%. So what they're saying is we're back to a normal market at the moment. Okay.
Now, how do you think real estate investors feel about that right now? Does this mean it's a good time to jump in and buy? Does this mean that, oops, we kind of missed the opportunity that was, last month or the last few months, those were the best opportunities? What do you think for real estate investors right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I guess it depends on what sort of strategy you're after. Having said that, there's always an opportunity in any sort of market. I would say like this might be one of the best opportunities. And I mean, if hindsight was 2020, I would say if you remember that chart, the fall, early winter was probably the moment. If you could pick a moment, yeah, you got some great opportunities there, because I'm going to show you some examples of when people purchased when no one else was buying.
Yeah.
But again, if we're predicting that these prices are going up, and you see an opportunity that makes sense, yeah, now is the time to jump in, I would say.
Yeah, I agree with you because, unfortunately, there's still going to be a percentage of homeowners who, their mortgage is coming up for renewal and they can't handle the renewal at the higher rates. Or there's people who've been struggling to make their mortgage payments and they haven't been able to do that for the last 6 or 8 months at the higher rates because they were, variable rate mortgages. So there's still, I think, going to be some people out there who were struggling. And there'd still be an opportunity to come in and help people. But I think maybe what we're seeing as sort of the flagship kind of, active listings on realtor.ca, I think we're definitely going to start to see the price points there going back up. And you had some insights too into a couple of deals that you've done recently, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to touch upon a little bit about, you mentioned about renewals and so on. We have seen certain examples of people that are looking to either downsize. So they'll, like, let's say like one client, I remember he's selling a $1.2 million home. He's going to an $800,000 home at the moment, again, because of the renewal. So we are seeing some of that. And we are seeing power of sales. I've certainly seen and witnessed them firsthand. Is that a big percentage of the market? Not really. However, you will see some of that kind of shakeout this year, at least when it comes up for renewal. So I'm glad you actually brought that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I have a client who works for one of the big banks, and he's saying he's noticed a dramatic increase in the defaults and people unable to pay credit card debt and those kinds of things. And in the past, we as Canadians have historically gone to our homes. We've done a debt consolidation or a refinance, and we've used our mortgages to pay down this higher interest money. But the reality is, with interest rates being where they are right now, even if they don't continue to go up, and I'll be honest, I don't see them going up much more. I think that they'll plateau here for a while, and then they'll slowly start to wind their way down. At least that's what I'm hoping. But I think that for those of for Canadians who use their homes to kind of buffer higher interest money, that's not really as much of an option anymore for people. So definitely people are struggling with their credit card and their consumer debt issues.
they're relying in many cases prices to continue to go up, refinance, and pay off those expensive debts. If that doesn't happen, they end up in trouble because they cannot sustain those higher interest rates for sure. And you know what? In that article, you mentioned about, like, again, rates. According to this, inflation expected to dwindle to 3% by mid-year and 2% by 2024. That's an interesting statement when I'm reading that. That means that rates are coming down if inflation is going to also go down. So
Yeah.
positive news, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like we've kind of, rounded the corner, or, overcome the biggest hurdle that was, kind of COVID and the inflation and all the other kind of offsetting pieces that have been the trickle down from the pandemic. Um, what are you seeing right now in terms of strategies that you think make a lot of sense? Like, what I've seen recently is, for everybody who wants to get into multifamily, that asset class really has not stumbled at all. It's harder to get financing, but there's more people than ever looking for multi-unit buildings, and it's hard to make the numbers make sense. Have you seen some smoking hot multifamily deals lately, or are you kind of running the numbers and going, this doesn't work?
Yeah, honestly, I have certainly looked at multifamily, and I have not. It's hard, like you said, hard to make the numbers work with the way the financing, how they underwrite, and the interest rates being so high. Unless prices come down to justify the investment, or there is a solid turnaround planned,
Hmm.
then I find it's a difficult strategy to execute properly.
Hmm.
So I haven't really come across a lot of those sort of opportunities that make sense. Now, I'm
Hmm.
sure there are some investors that are making that work. And I'm finding that, like I mentioned earlier, it's like with a solid turnaround plan where they're getting renovating, putting new tenants in, and they're good at doing, like, say, cash for keys option. But that's not for everyone, right? That's for someone, I think, that has that sort of background and that skill.
Yeah, absolutely. I think education is key at this point, because if you're just buying because everybody else is buying multifamilies and you don't have the kind of knowledge and the plan to back you up. And that's one of the things I love the most, Tom, about working with you. Not only are you a realtor, you have that background in accounting. So I know you are going through those numbers with a fine-tooth comb. Now, that being said, you and I were talking a little bit before about flipping and whether it's time for flipping to make a comeback, because now we're starting to see, of course, the markets go up. So flippers have really struggled since February of last year. So have people who do the BRRRR strategy, any investment strategies that have counted on an after repair value, um, or a current market valuation, have really struggled for the last pretty much a year. but you were kind of cautiously optimistic when we spoke earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So like flipping, for those people who are not aware, like flipping is one of those strategies that I focus on. So for me, I've been, I would say, been consistently doing it. So I've had good success. And I've like continued doing that throughout this period. Now, have I scaled back? Absolutely. But let me share with you an example of one recent flip that was completed by a client of mine. So I'm just going to share my screen here. Let me kind of go back to, do you see that, Elizabeth, there? It says Bromsgrove there.
Yes, we can see that.
Okay, awesome. So this was actually an on-market deal. Okay, I'll emphasize that because a lot of people say, hey, you can't find any deals on MLS. That's not true. That's not true at all. So this is a townhouse in Bromsgrove. This is in South Mississauga. You can see that it was sold for $586,600, and that took place on January the 27th. So that's just almost 3 months from 3 months ago. And this property, if you just have a look at it, not pretty. It's
Ouch.
yeah.
What an opportunity. I see. Is that did it smell like smoke? It looks like it smelled like smoke.
No, you would think so. I think it was just not
Dirt.
taken care of. Yeah, dirt or whatever. Look at that.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah,
That's pretty sexy in the world of real estate investing there, Tom.
that's called a Tom special, I think.
I love it. And you're kind of being very understated. The reality is you've been a flipper for approaching a decade now, and you do multiple flips every year. So I would consider you an experienced flipper. This is not necessarily something for the faint of heart. I love how the shower head's there, but there's nowhere for the water to go.
Yeah, and keep in mind too, like to buy this, if there are no fixtures, you cannot get financing. So it's private money or cash in this case. So just want to give your audience there some context. So that was purchased again in January for 586. Let's fast forward to last week, which would have been April, let's call it April 15th or so. So this is the after. So listed for 749. We had 7 offers on this. So I'll repeat that, 7 offers on it. It sold for 800,000.
Yeah.
And as you can see here, here's kind of the after.
Oh, this is so nicely done. Great job. I love the staging too. Staging makes such a difference. It's so worth the investment.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. Just gets those emotion for that buyer to kind of make that decision.
Absolutely, especially when you pick a nice statement color like the blues.
But
So did they add any bathrooms or any bedrooms or anything? What's tell me more about this property here.
so it's 3 bedrooms, 1.5 bathrooms with a finished basement. I think the key kind of differences, aside from the cosmetic, were like, making this more open concept. You can see that there, but keeping the structural integrity. The basement was unfinished, so it was drywalled and completed, but no extra bathroom. Really, I would say a very straightforward sort of reno at the end of the day, with an emphasis
So
on
what kind of
cosmetic.
cost would we be looking at? What kind of profit margin would this flipper be potentially seeing?
That's a good question. So his cost. So again, this is a client of mine. He has his own crew, so his cost is a lot lower than I would say most people. But I would say you spent between 50 and 70,000 on this, and then
Wow.
yeah, 50 to 70 in that range. And again, you've got a difference there. Remember, he bought it for 586. This is 800, so about a $215,000 delta.
Yeah.
There was money made. Exactly how much, I'm not entirely sure, but let's just
Ballpark is
say
good.
that enough that would excite, I think, anybody.
Yeah. And one of the ways I can tell this is an experienced flipper is the speed at which it happened. That's, I think, one of the mistakes that a lot of new flippers make is that, they let the flips drag on for 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. That's where you're losing money. Like a good flip, you should be in and out in 60 to 90 days.
I would say so. Average for us is about 4 months. In and out, in a sense, like by the time you
Closed.
close, the time you close on your sale, because it may take you
Yeah.
2 months to renovate, but you need some time to sell and close. So 4 months is the average.
Hmm.
And this particular investor, he's a focus on turnover. The more I
Gotcha.
do, the more I make.
Yeah. And that limits some of the insecurity within the market as well, right? Like if you're not planning on closing in a year and you're trying to future predict the market, like what's it going to be doing a year from now? Because the reality is, I think we can see all these newspaper stories, very few of them have really accurately depicted what we have then lived through in the last 12 months.
Yeah, absolutely. But let me share with you kind of another sort of case study as well. This is not a flip, but it's actually something that I put a bid on but didn't work out. So this is in Mississauga. It's a small detached home, 3 bedrooms, 3 washrooms, listed for $799. It had over 15 offers, sold here for $950. Okay, just this last week.
Wow.
Yeah, so give you an idea of the competition, but I'm going to put this in context very shortly. But let me first go through some of the photos here, just to give you an idea. I like how they put now the brokerage name at the bottom. That's new.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I guess they don't want people to steal the photos, but
Yeah.
you get kind of the impression, right? Like this
Yeah.
is a starter detached in Mississauga for
Yeah.
$950. Now to put into context, Elizabeth, okay, this same home back in January, a similar home like this sold for $820.
Cool.
So we're looking at about $130,000 difference in that short time frame.
Yeah.
Why? Because there were no buyers in January, and now there are 15 all of a sudden bidding on a property like this and paying $950 for it.
Interesting. So, do you think it's so obviously inventory or supply of properties to buy is an issue, as it's been predicted, because there are just way more Canadians who need places to live than there are places to live right now?
Yeah, we had this, remember, we had pent up demand. There were so many buyers on the sidelines wondering what's going on with interest rates? What's going on
Hmm.
with the market? I want to buy, but I'm kind of sitting on the fence about the idea. Now, all of a sudden, with this announcement, with interest rates being held, all of a sudden people are jumping back in, and there's this bit of this herd mentality that's causing the pent up demand to basically start buying.
Gotcha. So would this be the time that you would say, hey, investors, if you've been sitting around with cash, like get out there and get back at it? Or would you recommend that people kind of let the surge go by and wait a couple more months and then maybe look at buying again in the fall? Because the fall is always traditionally the quietest time of the year, right? Right into the Christmas season.
I find actually fall to be the second busiest time of year.
So you're talking about like September, October, and I'm thinking more like November to January is the quietest.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say September, October is pretty busy, and the reason is people are back from vacations. So your summers are vacation season, so it's a little less busy. Then it picks up. But honestly, like to answer your question, I would be just looking and seeing if there's an opportunity to
Hmm.
purchase now. Is what I'm doing every single day. So I would not wait for it. I would continue to look, and if you see something you like that meets your criteria, again, depending on your strategy, then I see, no harm in jumping on that particular sort of property.
Yeah. And one of the things I love the most about you, Tom, is that you're a realtor, you're a very experienced realtor, you're fantastic at it, but you kind of do a really great job breaking a deal down into pieces. So, for those of you who don't, this might not make sense for yet. What I'm talking about is a deal has three different pieces to it. So, the first part is how you acquire the property, the second part is what you do with the property, and then the third part is how you divest yourself of the property. So Tom does a really good job of sniffing out all these different leads for his clients. A lot of them are investors and flippers. And then it kind of becomes, what do you decide to do to make money on that property? And then you have your exit strategy on the back end, which typically you're going to make the most money on a property if you list it for sale with a realtor, especially when we start to see, these environments where we're back to multiple offers and bidding wars again.
Yep. No, I mean, 100%. I mean, I appreciate the kind of description there. I think, really the value is always in the buy, right? Is just being able to underwrite, understand, analyze the deal and see the opportunity. Much like the examples I presented there, it was being always active in the market and then kind of seeing, okay, yes, there is an opportunity here. I think we can buy this, sell it for X, and then basically move on, right? So there's some, again, with the case study there as an example.
Perfect. Love it. Okay, so predictions for the next 6 to 12 months. What are your thoughts? And of course, we can't, like, nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody is, but let's just say you were someone who wanted to throw your hat in and say what you think is going to happen.
I think I'm going to be really busy. Honestly, like, we have this pent up demand, and
Yeah.
you got to remember our volume has been down, meaning the number of people out there buying is down by 40%. I knew that was not going to last.
Yeah.
I think the signals are telling people jump back in. And I think, and the one thing too, I'll say is the only wild card is if Bank of Canada says, whoa, 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 we got to increase rates by another 1%, another 100 basis points. That's going to throw things in a different direction. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not, but that is always a wild card. So I do think it's going to be a busy rest of the year. And the thing too is just anecdotally, like with wholesalers, for example, like when I was buying properties, even with wholesalers interacting, I felt like I was one of the few buyers out there negotiating deals. Now, all of a sudden, I'm competing against those properties with other investors. So, those are some of the kind of the anecdotes that I can kind of share is like, yeah, people are already there. And I feel like the best opportunity would have been like, again, the fall and early winter.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think interestingly as well, I think there's a lot of realtors who kind of, over the last year, if they were younger, if they were less experienced, if they were less committed and driven, I feel like a lot of realtors kind of hung up their licenses. Like it was a really tough time for a realtor to make it through. I feel like a lot of people kind of left. So the people who are left are people like you who are seasoned veterans who know how to kind of go through, some of the tougher markets and how to offer additional services and opportunities to your clients. Is that an accurate feeling based on what you've seen? There's less realtors available?
We have too many realtors, right? To begin with, 60,000 realtors. A lot of them came during COVID, and we're just honestly they weren't taking, they're making so quote unquote easy money. And now the easy money is left. So they're pursuing other sort of ventures. So I think this is a good thing. I think it's going to keep the quality people that take this sort of profession seriously, who do this on a daily basis. So yeah, I mean, that's what we're seeing at the moment is there is an exit out of this sort of realtor world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I've felt too. Any last thoughts or can you just share with us a little bit more about your brokerage, who you're with, where people find you?
Yeah, so I mean, just some last thoughts. Again, I think it's going to be a really busy time. If you're somebody that has been on the sidelines for, I think you should be looking at a deal or two a day, just seeing what's out there. I'm kind of privy to that because this is what I do for a living. So you start seeing kind of patterns and behaviors like what I shared with you earlier, which all of a sudden allows you to kind of have that foresight into which direction things are going. So hence, that would be my recommendation is look at 1 or 2 deals a day, and then that'll enable you to spot the opportunities as they come.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So if you are struggling, having a tough time, if your expenses have gone up and you're not cash flowing, make sure you reach out to someone like Tom or someone like me. We would be more than happy to brainstorm solutions and help you through, kind of this tough time to get to the point where, you can sell your property in the future for a really nice profit and then maybe do a little private lending and retire early. Thank you so much for your time today, Tom. We really appreciate it. I'll make sure all your contact info is included on the video notes.
Yeah, absolutely. And if people want to reach out, my office line 905-568-2121. And again, it's Thomas Pobojewski from LePage Signature.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tom. All the best. We'll see you again in just a few months.
Thanks, everyone.